So on this slide on the top right, you see an example of an FPGA I/O item. So FPGA I/O items, they connect the I/O to the FPGA logic. So this is the way that you'll get signals into and out of the FPGA. Each FPGA I/O item has a type like analog or digital. So you might have an analog input that's coming into the FPGA, or you might have like a digital output that the FPGA is sending out. FPGA VIs can have multiple types of I/O items. So they can have analog inputs, outputs, digital I/O. There might be several digital I/O lines on a particular FPGA VI. If you go to the NI example finder, you can navigate to Toolkits and Modules, FPGA, Compact Rio, Basic I/O if you want to take a look at some examples of different I/O that you're using on an FPGA. So let's talk a little bit about FPGA I/O terminology. So first, let's talk about a terminal. The terminal is the actual hardware connection. For example, on a Compact Rio module, you might have an actual pin for a digital I/O line. Next, we have an I/O resource. So the I/O resource is a logical representation in LabVIEW FPGA of that hardware terminal. So for example, in that previous slide, you saw an I/O node, which is representing that particular, possibly a digital I/O line that's on your FPGA. And then lastly, you have an I/O name. So in the LabVIEW project, you can assign that I/O resource a name. So instead of just having it look like digital I/O line 0, it could be something like emergency stop line. And you can give it something that makes a little bit more sense and it makes your code a little bit more readable.